Okay, guys, welcome to our second podcast here at iTechTriad. And today we've got a special guest. It's TJ, also known as MacAdvisorUK. So TJ, welcome to our podcast today. How you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you, Alex. It's nice to be here. Excited to be doing the podcast today.
Okay, awesome. We're also joined by Ben and also Timothy. How you guys doing?
What's up? I'm doing pretty good.
Okay, so we're going to talk about Apple's event, which we had on Tuesday. I'm just going to be talking and giving our thoughts on the new devices that were announced and also some other details. So first off, TJ, so you're our Apple expert here. What was your thoughts on Apple's event, especially with the iPad Air?
Well, it was exciting as always. Apple always likes to put on a show and roll out new products and software. In this case, we saw some software updates. I guess the big thing for me was the iPad. That's what I was most looking forward to. If we just go through some of the things that they obviously announced Mavericks, released that on the day of the event. We saw updated Macs, MacBook Pro, and they released the Mac Pro, which we were kind of expecting. What else did we have? We had some software updates for iLife and iWork, and they went free as well, which was another surprise, something that I've kind of been expecting a couple of them to go free, like Pages, Numbers, and Keynote with the iCloud beta that they released a few months ago. Mm-hmm. But I wasn't expecting sort of new versions of iLife or anything, but they are all sort of free. And then it was sort of onto the iPad stuff. We had the iPad Mini second generation with the Retina display, which was pretty much what everybody was expecting. And then we had the iPad Air, which is the fifth generation iPad, and the name iPad Air was obviously a surprise because it hadn't been sort of leaked in any rumors as far as I was aware.
Mm-hmm, yep, that was a shocking one. I gotta say, I was watching the event, and when they said iPad Air, I kind of had a little bit. I was like a little bit confused. I'm still, I don't know, with the name iPad Air. It's still kind of like something that hasn't hit me. I like it better than the new iPad. That was just something for me. I was just like, what are they doing with calling it the new iPad? I like the name iPad Air better.
I don't like the iPad Air. I just don't like it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess
it's thinner, but
yeah, I guess it's. I mean, I could see on how thin the device and how light almost you could put as Air. I guess it's one of those things. It's going to be interesting. I like to see what Apple does next generation around what they will call it.
Well, there has been some sort of speculation, hasn't there, in the rumours that they're going to be doing sort of a bigger iPad. And sort of in the last couple of days since they've announced this iPad Air, there's been people saying that perhaps this larger iPad would be an iPad Pro. So it sort of ties in with the names that they've given to the MacBook range.
Mm-hmm. Which actually kind of makes sense. Yeah, if they did that. But I guess, we were talking... Ben and I on our first podcast, we were mentioning Ben actually had this kind of genius idea come in the middle of the podcast. We saw like kind of the icons on Mavericks for like iBooks and iWorks. They kind of had the same as iOS 7. And Ben was kind of saying, hey, what if that bigger iPad ran iOS, but also ran OS X, which would actually, I think, kind of be genius. You have the Surface. How you can have the keyboard connect to the tablet itself.
Yeah.
Which I think that would kind of be nice on Apple's end to do that. Maybe have like a high storage. I know Wozniak was saying he wanted something with 200 and something plus gigabytes on his iPad.
Yeah, I think I read somewhere that he wanted 256 gigabytes in an iPad, which would probably be overkill for most people, but for him, I guess he needs that.
Yeah, I couldn't even fill up a 32 gig yet. I mean, I guess if I really start using it like crazy, I could, but 32 for me is perfect. Now, TJ, what was your thoughts on Mavericks going free?
Well, that was a surprise for me. I mean, it was rumored last year when Mountain Lion came out that perhaps that might go free. So there has been talk of OS X going free for some time, but I wasn't expecting it this year. I thought perhaps they would keep to the same price point as Mountain Lion, or maybe just reduce the price slightly, maybe put it at $10 or $15, and then perhaps go free next year. So it was a surprise, and it wasn't, because it has sort of been rumoured to be going free for some sort of time, but it was certainly a shock that they were making Mavericks free. So obviously that's a bonus to anybody, particularly those that have sort of been putting off upgrading for the last couple of years, and they can now sort of get the latest version for free, and they obviously launched it on the day of the event as well, which was a nice surprise because everybody sort of wants to get their hands on it as soon as possible.
Yep. Yeah, I was super happy when that happened. I've noticed my Mac has been running definitely much smoother than with Mountain Lion. So have you been noticing that too with your Macs?
Yeah, I mean, I've got the 2012 15-inch MacBook Pro Retina, the top model that was out at the time, and it runs fine anyway, but I've just noticed it seems to be a little bit faster and smoother when I'm scrolling and navigating through different things, so certainly some definite improvements. And there's also been some sort of fixes for me as well in it, because I did have some slight issues with certain things in Mountain Lion that never got resolved. And a couple of them I noticed have been fixed with the upgrade to Mavericks. So fingers crossed that sort of sorted out any issues that I did have.
Yeah, I've also noticed that too. I did have some issues with Mountain Lion before, and I noticed I don't know, for me a lot of it was actually Wi-Fi issues. I noticed Apple would push updates for that and then work a little bit. And that's mostly with my iMac. I noticed I was having the issues. I don't know if it's something to do. I've taken it into Apple, but they haven't been able to resolve that. Also, what's your opinions on the fact that the iPhone 5S, the sales that they had between the 5S and the 5C?
9 million, I think, wasn't it, for the opening weekend, which was a record. It would be nice if they could actually break that down occasionally and just give us the individual sales figures for like the 5S and the 5C. Because I think they did the same when the iPads came out last year, didn't they? And they didn't break the sales down for iPad mini and the 4th generation iPad. It'd just be interesting to see what the sales numbers were. But 9 million is an impressive number, probably more than some retail, some mobile phone manufacturer would be selling a whole quarter. But it was certainly a large figure, and a lot more than some of the analysts have been predicting as well. So that's one over on the analysts that usually like to try and get it right occasionally, and they get it wrong most of the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was actually shocked at how well the 5S sold, and not so much I didn't think it was going to do well, but it seemed like the demand was higher than the iPhone 5, in which you'd think, the iPhone 5 was redesigned compared to the 4. You had a bigger screen, and it seemed like people were just going more crazy for the 5S than they were for the 5. So,
yeah, I found that quite strange as well. I mean, particularly, there seems to be a lot of people, certainly that I've spoken to, that are upgrading from iPhone 5s as well, which for me personally, having used both now, obviously I've upgraded for the purpose of doing my YouTube stuff, but I would have just stuck with the 5 and waited for whatever comes out next year. But there seems to be a lot of people upgrading from the 5 from what I've spoken to. I don't know whether you've found the same speaking to different people.
Yeah, I've actually had a lot of people ask me, should I upgrade from my 5? And, I told them pretty much, if you want to pay for a fingerprint scanner and a slow motion camera, you have of course you have the speed, but for the most part, what most people use their devices for, they're not looking for the crazy things that maybe someone who's really into technology is looking for. So I told them it's better just wait around for the 6, which I personally think, and I've been saying this for quite a while now, Apple, I think, has something under their sleeve that they're just waiting to release that is just going to shock people. I have a feeling it's somewhere there, whether it's the iWatch, whatever it is, they have something that is just going to just boom, shock people. I don't know whether it might be the 6. Yeah, go ahead, Ben.
Speaking of the iWatch, did you guys see that render the other day?
I did. I don't know. Did you see it, TJ?
Is that the fuel band type one?
Yeah, that, honestly, I would buy that. And I have an Android. I would buy that because it's just so cool.
Yeah. The only thing that I found strange about it was that the way that the screen was positioned. If I was sort of holding my wrist up to sort of look at the device, the screen would be the wrong orientation.
Yeah,
that was the only thing that put me off it slightly.
Yeah, I guess it's gonna. I mean, I've seen the Galaxy Gear, and that's a pretty looking watch. I have to say, when I was at Best Buy, it kind of intrigued me looking at it. It didn't work from the reviews. It was doing horrible. But I think if Samsung can make a beautiful looking device like that, I could only imagine what Apple could do with the iWatch. But my thing is with these watches is, I don't know about you, TJ, if you wear a watch, but my watches get a beating. when I'm using them. One corner, you're walking and one corner will nick that device. If you have like an iWatch or a Gear, it would nick that device and just destroy it. So I'm wondering, how are they going to make it durable, maybe even waterproof, but also keep it looking beautiful at the same time?
Oh, I guess they would use the sapphire glass they have on the iPhone 5S home button now, because it doesn't scratch. That's probably what they would use, because that'd be really hard to scratch.
I know a lot of high-end watches tend to use sapphire crystal, sort of faces on the watches, so that could be a possibility.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see what they have within the iWatch. Now, how about Timo? What's your thoughts on the iWatch?
Well, the Samsung, as you can tell, the camera is on the bottom of your wrist. So when you put your wrist down, it kind of damages the camera, I guess. So I guess Apple has to watch that on how to, not destroy the camera if they put a camera on their iWatch.
Yeah, which I don't know. What do you think, DJ? Camera on a watch?
Personally, not for me. I mean, I would rather just have the camera on my phone. I wouldn't necessarily. I mean, you're not going to get anything decent on a watch in the first place.
Yeah.
Plus, you've got to find somewhere to put it. It's extra components in the watch. So it would be ideal for me if they just left it out rather than putting it in, trying to cram it into the watch.
I totally agree, because also you're talking costs will go up on the device. And again, like you said, really what good picture can you take with a watch? For that, I think put more functionality within the watch between your iPad, your iPhone, and the rest of your Apple devices. I think would make a successful iWatch. Again, it's the durability, functionality. So I'm interested to see. I mean, I think 2014 is going to be interesting as it comes to Apple products. We've always heard that the TV, iTV, whatever they're going to call it. Me personally, we know cost is going to be, for an Apple TV, that's going to be pretty penny for that television set there. So
yeah.
So it's going to be interesting to see. Now, what do you think of the Mac Pro, TJ?
That's very interesting and very expensive as well for those that have got the cash to stump up for it. $3,000, I think, was it in the US that it starts at?
Yeah, that's a horse of a computer, though. Whew.
It'll be interesting to go on the Apple Store when you can actually order this thing and just fully spec it out to see, firstly, what specs you can get out of it and what sort of price you can get it to.
Yeah, I guess, I mean, for me personally, if I did get one, I would probably sell off my my MacBook Pro and any other computer that I have to get that, because, I mean, the things you can do, especially for like video editing, that thing is just, man. I've kind of the look of the Mac Pro itself has actually kind of grown on me as well. I don't know. Some people say it looks like a garbage can, but yeah, it's grown on me, definitely. Now, TJ, this is more on the humorous side. I don't know. Did you catch Phil Schiller? He called the Dark Knight the Black Knight.
Yeah, I noticed that in the keynote. Yeah.
Okay, so I wasn't the only one who caught that. I noticed.
Oh no, I got it too.
You did? Okay. I was like, did he call him the Black Knight? That was interesting. Now, TJ, I got another question for you. How you been liking iOS 7 since receiving it last month?
I've been liking it. There's obviously been a lot of stuff over it. Some people like it, some don't. But I've not really got any major complaints with it. I upgraded it on my iPhone 5 when it came out. I've had it running on my third generation iPad. The only sort of slight issues I've had with it was sort of on my third gen iPad tends to be a little slow occasionally. Like when I'm changing the wallpaper, for instance, or if I go to bring up Spotlight, it might take for a couple of seconds for the keyboard to come up. So it's just little things like that, but there's nothing majorly that I sort of dislike about it. But it's just sort of trying to get used to using the same apps that we're all familiar with, but having to enter them in a different way or use them in a different way, or just the way that everything's laid out and the whole look of it's changed as well. So it's sort of trying to rediscover the same apps that we sort of use all the time as well.
Yeah, me when I first received it, it was one of those things that I was torn between it, and then actually after a while, and I've noticed a lot of people say this, it starts to grow on you.
Yeah.
After a little bit, so it's kind of one of those things. I mean, I totally forget actually how iOS 6 looks. When I looked at my dad's iPad, he had iOS 6, and it was kind of like, whoa, kind of throws you for a loop. But I gotta say, it's been running pretty good. I got an iPad Mini which I've been using it on, so it's been running pretty good. And how about the 5S? Have you been enjoying that device so far?
Yeah, I've not had any problems with it. I mean, it's a change for me because obviously, for those that don't know, I've always had black iPhones, more or less, and I've sort of gone to a white one this time. So it's a change for me to be using a white device. And I think iOS 7 generally looks better on the white devices, and obviously Apple always advertises it more on the white devices. But it's pretty fast on here. I mean, I don't really see any general performance increase in just sort of general navigating around the OS or sort of general things that you would do on the phone when using the 5S with iOS 7 on it. But it's great. I mean, I've not had a chance to play around with the camera too much. I need to sort of do a video on that at some point for YouTube on the camera. The Touch ID seems to work sort of on and off. I've had mixed success with that. I don't know if anybody else has tried it, what your sort of success rate's been with it.
Me personally, Touch ID was working just beautifully when I was using it. It was, for me, I liked it because you can get into your device so much quicker than putting in a passcode. So before I wouldn't put in a passcode. So actually now my device was so much more secure as it comes to security and people getting into my phone who don't need to be in there. So Touch ID, I think, was brilliant by Apple. I would have actually liked to seen it with the iPad Air, actually, personally. I guess that's something we'll see in next generation. Now, TJ, this is something a lot of people have been showing complaint against Apple, is the fact of the iPad lineup. The fact that they kept the 2, got rid of the 3, and then they had the iPad mini Retina go up. Of course, we had a higher price on it. What was your thoughts on that kind of switch that Apple did there?
Well, I don't know why they kept the iPad 2 around. It would have sort of made sense to finally get rid of that because that does have the old 30-pin connector in it and so on. And they could have perhaps just kept a 16GB 4th generation iPad round for that sort of price. It would have made more sense and probably more appealing to anybody who's looking to buy one. But I'm sure I read something the other day that the iPad 2 had been sort of the most successful iPad that they've had to date, or the one that sold the most, and that's probably one of the reasons why they're keeping this thing around, because it's still a good seller. As for the price increase for the iPad mini with the Retina display was a surprise, because traditionally Apple have always kept the same price point whenever they've introduced a new product. They usually say, this is our new product, this is what the old one cost, and we're still keeping the same price point for this new one. So, I mean, obviously they probably had to go up the prices a little bit because of that Retina display. That's obviously costly. But at the same time, they did keep around one model of the original iPad mini, and they dropped the price of that. Is it $300, I think, in the US now?
Yep. $299. Yeah. And I can actually see kind of what Apple was doing there. Because if you remember the iPad mini, it didn't have the same specs as that current generation. I think it was the iPad 4. So what Apple kind of did is they bumped the specs. I think, if I recall, the specs on the iPad mini Retina are the same as the iPad Air, right?
Exactly the same, even the screen resolution.
Exactly. So I could see kind of why Apple bumped up the price, because I guess people's reaction is, okay, well, I'd like an iPad mini with the same specs as that current generation regular iPad. So I could kind of see what Apple did with lowering the price of the one without Retina display to get people happy about that, and then kind of bump up the price of the Retina but give it the same specs, which I think it's $399, right, for the iPad mini with Retina?
Yep.
Okay, so we're paying $60 more, but you get the same specs as a new generation iPad. So the question is, how's it going to do with success, being you have that cheaper iPad mini, and then you have the iPad Retina, the mini with Retina, and then you have the iPad Air. So I guess people are going to have to really decide what to do. But I agree with you, TJ, on the iPad 2. I really think Apple, I was shocked they kept the iPad 2. It's just like, I think they could have even gone with brought back the 3rd generation iPad, and they could have done a little better. Even though you still have the 30-pin connector, at least you have that Retina display, which I really think they shouldn't have any more devices without a Retina display.
Yeah. I mean, I think that they've been keeping the iPod Classic around as well. I was expecting, they obviously didn't do a refresh or anything of the iPods this year, but I'm expecting them to get rid of that at some point, but they still keep hanging that around, and that's either due for a refresh or they just need to get rid of it, because that, I mean, again, that's another device that's still got the 30-pin connector, and I would have thought that they would be trying to push the lightning connector on all devices sort of going forward. So that was kind of a surprise why they kept the iPad 2 around, particularly if you've got the iPad mini, the original one, which is again it's a similar specs to the iPad 2, isn't it? So
yeah,
it didn't kind of make sense why they've got the iPad mini and the iPad 2 the same sort of specs. I mean, the only difference is really the screen size between the two. But obviously that's they've made that decision based on a number of factors, I suppose.
Yeah, it's probably got to be all with sales. But I genuinely think had they gotten rid of the iPad 2 and like you said, maybe bring the iPad 4, 16 gigabyte, and I really think the iPad 4, you would see the sales just increase like crazy. And I think Apple could easily do it, because if you think about it, they still have iPad 4s sitting around. They still have where they can push that out, basically out of their inventory, and just sell them off. So I guess it's kind of they have their reasons for their decisions on what they do. What I've been waiting for is to see that Retina Plus or bump up the resolution on Retina on their future devices, which hopefully we'll see that maybe this year. So I guess it's one of those things we'll have to keep an eye on. How about Timo? What's your thoughts on these products?
I was disappointed with the iPad mini with the Retina display, how they raised up the price, but I guess how you pointed that out, how they kept the same specs as the current generation of iPad. I guess that's why they pumped it up. So I guess, but I was kind of disappointed, but it's all right, I guess. I was wanting to get an iPad mini, but now like you said, it's only $60 more to have the same specs. I'm like, now I'm kind of like decided,
yeah. Well, if you really look at it, you got to look at the price and see, well, what's the difference between this model. You're paying for specs.
Yeah.
Pretty much in between the two, which I can see, because you have people who care about the specs, and then there's other ones who really don't care. They just want iOS.
Yeah.
They want a tablet. So it's gonna be interesting to see Apple's sales. I know had they TJ, you probably agree with this, had they made a gold model of the iPad, I think people would be going crazy.
Yeah.
When it gets released.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I was sort of on the fence about. There was obviously the rumours that they were going to make gold iPads and they were going to put Touch ID in there. I was sort of on the fence about those rumours, particularly with the 5S getting those things. And obviously the gold 5S is in such high demand at the moment. And I know the Touch ID sensor, the yield rates aren't so high. So that's one of the things that's constraining the supplies of the 5S. So it doesn't make sense in one way to put those into the iPad, because it would sort of hold back the iPhone 5S. It would put supply constraints on the iPads as well. So I guess that was one reason for leaving those things out. But I think you're right that if they did do a gold iPad, then that would probably be on the top of a lot of Christmas lists this year.
Yeah. Now, my thing is, I don't know how you feel about this, TJ. What is going on with no pre-orders?
Yeah, that was a strange one. I mean, I can understand it with the 5S because they were in such short supply. And I could possibly understand it with the iPad mini with Retina display, because again, I've been reading stuff that's going to be in such short supply when it comes out. But with the iPad Air, I was quite surprised that they weren't doing pre-orders.
Yeah, so, I guess, I mean, I don't know, maybe if it's the fact that maybe the demand, I think like, it seems like when there's no pre-order, you have more people going crazy over it, because now it's pretty much a same field for chances of getting one. You don't have someone who woke up at 3 a.m., pre-ordered it, and they're good. Now everyone has to kind of battle against each other to get their hands on the device. So, I mean, me personally, I would have liked to see pre-order on the iPad Air, because when I went to get the iPhone 5S, it was a battle. I mean, I think I was out at 9 a.m., TJ, and I couldn't finally get my hands on one till 5 p.m. of literally running around town, hunting one down. Finally, I was able to get to like a Sprint store. I got the last one in stock, I think, of all the Sprint stores in my local area, and they were waiting for a shipment to arrive that afternoon from FedEx. So it's kind of interesting how Apple's kind of getting rid of the pre-orders. I'd like to see that definitely come back, because it makes it much easier in picking up the devices and getting your hands on them.
Yeah, I mean, I live in sort of a small village, so the nearest Apple store to me is probably about 30 or 40 miles away. So it's not really easy for me to get to one to be able to get one for launch day, you see. So, I mean, it was a bit strange as well because they did put up a huge, great big long list of countries that the iPad Air would be available in on launch day. So that to me said that they'd got plenty of stock to move around everywhere. So normally they try, if they've only got sort of a few like they did with the 5S, they launch in a few, half a dozen countries at launch. So it's a bit strange to me that they didn't do pre-orders. I would have liked to have seen that.
Yeah. Ben, what's your thought on it?
I think they do it just to build up hype. I mean, there's no good reason not to at least let you pre-order it, because even if they pre-order it, it's still going to sell out just as quick. But if you pre-order it, at least you don't have people fighting to get into an Apple store. I think they just do it to build up hype and to get people into the stores.
Yeah, and it gets people, I think, talking about it more. When you have lines that start building up days and days before, which I'm surprised yet we haven't seen. I mean, I haven't been too much on the news lately. I've been so busy, but I don't know. Has anyone seen lines yet still forming in the New York Apple store? Because that usually starts a week to two before Apple actually releases the device.
I don't know, but those people are insane.
Yeah, I haven't kept it, but yeah, from what I've seen, analysts have been saying that we could see actually a 65-inch Apple TV in 2014. So it's gonna be interesting. Apple's got a lot of things coming up. I'd like to see their stock kind of start going up, because I don't know if you remember, TJ, back between the 4S and the 5, their stock was booming.
Yeah, it went up to about $700 at one point, and it's sort of gone down. It is creeping up slowly. Now we're sort of getting into the part where, the 5S is out, the iPads are out, and it's sort of starting to go up again. But depending on when they release the next load of products, sometime next year, then that's probably going to start to fall again, as it usually does, and then maybe start to pick up again. But I suppose it all really depends on whatever Apple's new big product is, whether it's going to be, as you said, an Apple TV, or whether it's going to be an iWatch, or this larger iPad, whatever that turns out to be, or maybe something that we don't even know about yet.
Yeah. Now, TJ, another subject here I've noticed recently. This is kind of, I'm just kind of throwing this out here. I've noticed here in the States, there's been quite a lot of sales on the iPhone 5C. Now, my thing is, do you think that device is kind of down from what Apple expected it to sell for?
I've been reading the same sort of things about retailers doing discounts and so on. I mean, half of it, I think, is probably that it's sort of approaching sort of the Christmas period, where retailers would traditionally discount things anyway. And that there's sort of been a lot of things about people saying perhaps it hasn't been as successful as Apple would liked it to have been. But I think it's probably early days yet to be sort of throwing things like that about. I mean, I think most people will initially have gone for the 5S. The techies or the people who want to get the latest thing will go for the iPhone 5S. And I think the 5C will probably do well over time, sort of over the next 12 months or however long it is till we get the next iPhone. So I think it will do well over time. Obviously, in the short term, I mean, it probably hasn't even been out a month yet or about. So I think sort of in the short term, obviously, it can't compare to the sales of the 5S, which I think is the one that everybody's going mad for at the moment.
Yeah, and I look at the 5C, and from when Apple released it, me personally, I didn't like the move to plastic. I can kind of see where they were coming from, and I guess it's more the fact that Apple used to get on Samsung about using plastic with their devices. So I kind of felt maybe they could have used a 5, given it a little bit of a better battery life, and then thrown that for much lower price like they usually have done. But I can kind of see where they're going with it, especially with the fact they have a lot of teenagers. I notice here in the States, I don't know how it is over there in the UK, but a lot of the teenage generation, they're into Apple products, and a lot of them love color. So the fact that Apple released an iPhone with all the different colors has really appealed to like the younger crowd, which I think they're kind of jumping on as it comes to sales with the 5C. Because I've noticed, like, for example, my sister had an option of a 5C. She went with a 5C because she could get it in a different color. So that's something I've kind of noticed. I don't know, what do you think Apple had intended with the 5C?
Well, I think they're just trying to set up a different range, because traditionally they've always, as you said, just discounted the previous model, and they've done that for years. And I think they're just trying to set up a complete different type of product going forward, so that every year they can bring out two models that are different. And I think part of obviously why they went for the plastic was, as you said, to introduce colours, to appeal to a different audience. And I think obviously the aluminium unibody that they use for the higher end iPhone, that obviously costs a lot of money and a lot of time and effort to produce. So if they were having to do iPhone 5s and iPhone 5Ss, knowing how constrained the supplies of the 5Ss are, it'd probably be pretty difficult for them to ship quite a lot of phones, particularly the millions that they would need to sell. So I think that was obviously part of the decision. But I think they're just trying to set up, as I said, like two different lines to appeal to different audiences. And some people don't like the 5C, they don't like the plastic, they don't like the colours, and that's fine. I mean, they can always go for the 5S if they want sort of the more premium feel, the metallic finishes. So, the choice is there for everybody.
Yeah, I agree. I never thought about that, because the fact is, if they did have to push out more 5s, then a lot of people wouldn't have iPhone 5Ss right now. So it's kind of one of those things. My only concern was the fact that they were reporting that Apple was shifting more attention to the 5S and the 5C, which at the same time could also show that maybe the 5S is in such high demand, they're just trying to push that as much as possible, especially with the holiday seasons coming around. How about Ben, Timo, what do you guys think about the 5C?
Timo, I'll let you take it first.
Okay. Well, as you pointed out, that it attracts the teenagers' attention, because they always wanted phones that stands out, So if like they go to school and they'll be like, yeah, I got this color and I got this color. Oh, you got that? They want a phone that stands out. And for techies, we want the specs, but for them, they would just want something that everybody could just notice. And for me, the 5C was for, just like what TJ said, for different people, for what they think, and different colors for different people.
And how about you, Ben? What was your thoughts on it?
I mean, I don't hate the 5C, but I really don't like it that much. I don't think it was a good idea, but it really wasn't a bad one at the same time. I like the fact that it's in different colors, but what I really don't like is the fact that they still kept a white one. Yeah. I don't get that at all.
Yeah, I was actually kind of shocked by that they had a white one. I was like, I guess some people want a plastic phone in white, so I guess it's kind of there. Now, TJ, I've told the guys this before, and I don't know what your opinion is on it, but I noticed, and I think this might be kind of the case with Apple. They always have the 5, they always have the regular model, then the S model. And I feel like, and I mentioned this in my review, which we're going to post soon, it seems like what happens is the consumers, they want a device once a year. And I actually personally think Apple doesn't want to push a device every year. If it were up to them, I think we'd see an iPhone every 2 years. And I feel like because the consumers they want this device so much, Apple has no choice but to release a 5, which they do. And I feel like they have another team focused on the 5S, in which they do little upgrades here and there, kind of seam things together, fix things from the 5, release an improved model to kind of please consumers. But I really feel that Apple puts all their work, 150%, in the regular model. So for example, like the 6, I feel is going to be really that huge device. What's your thoughts on that?
I guess you're talking sort of about a complete redesign of the phone every year. I think technology in general, I mean, if you look at the last few years at the different phones that we've had and the S models and so on, technology only really seems to drastically improve sort of every couple of years. I mean, I've got the 5S, I've come from a 5. If I'd have stuck with the 5, I'd have been completely happy. There isn't generally, for most people, enough in the S to upgrade. I suspect next year when the iPhone 6 or whatever they call it comes out, there might be something in that worth upgrading if you've got a 2-year-old phone. So I think that's part of the issue. I think technology sort of improves more over time. And also the fact that they probably spend a lot of design and engineering time on designing that initial generation of the phone. So something like the iPhone 5, they put that much money into the machinery to manufacture these things, and the design and the engineering challenges that go into it, that it makes sense from a financial point of view in some cases to sort of keep that same design for the second year and just focus on upgrading the internals if there isn't any sort of major technological changes. So I think that might be part of it.
Yeah, and if you look back, if you remember between the iPhone 4 and the 4S, everyone was expecting the 4S or the iPhone 5, what everyone thought, to be announced in June. And if you remember, when Apple did not announce it in June, people were going crazy. They were, what is going on? Where's this next iPhone? Anticipation built like crazy. So I feel like it's almost like Apple's kind of stuck in that, the fact that they're always going to have to make that. They're not, they could, but I don't see them going like from iPhone 5 to iPhone 6 because of the fact Apple likes to perfect things. They like to really work on it. So it seems like we're always going to see that S model, and it seems like it's more for consumers' benefit. Because I don't really think Apple would wait if they could.
Yeah, I think obviously they have to upgrade something every 12 months because obviously it makes good business sense to do so. But you're obviously only going to see something completely new every couple of years, I think, as I said, just due to the advances in technology, and it takes a lot of time to sort of design and engineer sort of that next new thing. And maybe Ben, who I know is sort of an Android expert, maybe Ben can come in here. I think there was a lot of stuff about this same kind of S generation type thing with the Samsung Galaxy S4. People were saying that that's the same design as the S3. I think it was slightly bigger, wasn't it? But people were saying that this kind of the S version for Samsung.
Yeah, the S4 was really just more of a spec upgrade and a little bit of a bigger screen than the S3. I mean, people with an S3 would be exactly the same off if they had an S4, because they're both going to get updated to 4.3, I think, before the end of this month.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, they're both great phones, but the S4 was really just more of a spec bump and another way for Samsung to release a phone a day.
Yeah, it seems like they're releasing a phone. I actually personally got tired of Samsung because I had the S3, and I mean, TJ, imagine having an iPhone and let's say you're with a carrier and you can't update to iOS 7 until next year. I mean, it's ridiculous and it gets tiring. But I could kind of see, how Apple goes with the S models. I think it's going to be shocking the day they don't come out with an S model. I don't see it, but the day that they actually release the next year a completely redesigned iPhone, I think that's really going to shock people when that does happen. But I think we've taken a lot of your time, TJ. Real quick, how's things going with the channel? A lot of people listening, if you haven't been to TJ's channel, he's always talking about everything Apple. Has a great channel. How's things coming along? And what things you got planned for the future?
Well, things are going great. I mean, if people that don't know me, you can find me on YouTube at youtube.com/MacAdvisorUK. I do all the Apple videos. I do various, try and do a different cross-section of videos. I try and put out regular videos, sort of maybe minimum of 4 a week, and things are going great. I think I've recently passed 18,000 subscribers. So that's great. I've been doing this for over 3 years now. So
yeah, I remember being subscribed. I think it was like at 7,000. So TJ's got some great videos. You got any future videos planned that you're looking forward to?
Well, I'm going to be putting my iPhone 5S review out shortly, and then I've got a couple of other iPhone 5S videos I need to do, and then I suppose next week we'll be getting into the iPad stuff, because I'm going to be picking up an iPad Air for myself. I'm going to be upgrading from the 3rd gen iPad, so that'll be another series of videos. And then I've got some ideas of things. I'm just sort of formulating ideas for things for the channel and other things going forward that we may see in 2014. So I would just say watch this space for now.
Yeah, awesome. We're really looking forward to this year, and we definitely enjoyed TJ's videos, guys. If you're listening, be sure to check out his channel, also his social networks. If you're watching this through YouTube, we'll leave a link in the description below so you guys can give his channel and his social networks a visit. TJ, it was a pleasure having you. Ben, Timothy, enjoyed it, guys, and we'll see you guys in our next podcast.